Hey everybody, Danox Harrison here, and welcome to the Mobalytics patch 1021 tier list. So as you may notice from the title of this video, we're back to doing low elo tier list, and we're going to keep the split between high elo and low elo. That plan lasted about as long as NA at Worlds. There was a lot of feedback from our viewers, and we talked about it and we agreed that Plat Plus is not relevant for the majority of the player base, so we're back with the low elo tier list. We're going to be highlighting picks that perform really well at that level and hopefully can give you the edge to make your climb before the end of the season. So moving on to the list itself, our S tier roster is Garen, Darius, Urgot, with God tier champs Shen, Fiora and Malphite. We've seen little movement. Ultimately the last couple of patches haven't been doing too much to top lane, but Camille and Maokai are struggling a little bit more after their nerfs, but it wasn't hugely significant. Camille lost some attack speed on the proc after using a hookshot, and this isn't a big deal and doesn't shift things up massively, but she already struggled to find as much success in low elo compared to high elo, and this is the sort of change that will edge down her win rate slightly. Now Maokai's damage nerf on his Q on paper wasn't a huge change, but because he spams that ability so much, it ended up having a moderate impact on how well he's performing, hence his move down to A tier. We have seen the emergence of Udyr top lane. Now, I haven't gone crazy, this is actually a thing, and it's down to some big changes to Udyr's Phoenix stance. It got buffed in 1019 and again on this patch, and it really has been significantly strengthened. The build is a mix of tankiness and CDR and a little bit of magic damage thanks to the Liandry's. Essentially, you'll be able to shred through waves and use the buffed Phoenix damage to come up strong in trades. Be sure to utilize your turtle stance for sustain and bear stance to apply some CC. I really encourage you to give this one a go in a normal game because the new numbers on his Phoenix stance absolutely melt your opponents, and it's just really fun to play. Next up, we're looking at the rock solid Monolith, and I will never be short of good things to say about this champion. I'm certain everyone is aware of the sheer power this champion has in teamfights, but he's holding up really well even in the early levels in top lane. Particularly if you're playing against an AD top and jungle, you can itemize really effectively and become an absolute nuisance. Make use of Grasp and your shield to go toe to toe with tough lane opponents, and once you hit 6, ping for your jungle to come top or find a chance to roam somewhere else and ruin someone's day. There's no better feeling than turning the enemy AD carry into a pancake. Moving to the most overpowered role next, please excuse my personal bias, we're looking at jungle. In S tier we have Warwick, Vi, Hecarim, Nunu, Fiddlesticks, Kha'Zix, and alone in God tier we have Kayn. Now a lot of changes did come through on this patch. Graves received some nerfs to the armor available to him on his True Grit passive. This isn't a huge change, but it does hurt his early dueling power into AD jungle opponents. Karthus lost some base armor, which definitely didn't help him when challenged by AD junglers, and made his clear a tiny bit less healthy. This isn't hugely significant, but Karthus isn't a big performer in lower ranks regardless. We also made the decision to move Nidalee completely off the list. She took some nerfs to a base AD, and that is a big change to the jungle when it comes to clear speed, which is one of Nidalee's main strengths. We also felt like at the lower ranks, Nidalee just isn't worth the investment to become good at. The playstyle is hard to execute on, and it's not a champion we would recommend. Nunu also took a slight hit with base armor nerfs, hence him moving down from God tier. The champion is still strong and impactful, but one of his main strengths was feeling almost unkillable in the early mid game, and this makes him just a little bit more vulnerable. I'd still recommend the champion, he's just a little less overpowered. Now, a lot of changes did come through on this patch, but a lot of the junglers that were nerfed didn't really have a solid ground in the lower ranks anyway. The most relevant nerf is to Hecarim. Not only did he take a big hit on the damage to his E, but they also nerfed Nimbus Cloak, which was something he loved to abuse. I still think Hecarim is strong, but he has moved down from the God tier, and we'll see how the changes pan out over the patch. First up, we're going to look at Kayn. He's performing super well at lower ranks, and the reason is he's just difficult to deal with. Kayn has a bit of a struggle to get going, but once he starts rolling and gets his form change, he can decimate. Both forms are viable. Shadow Assassin is more snowbally and great at popping squishies, while Rast is much more durable and is the bane of tanks, and in a lot of situations the safer bet for reliable performances, but you're not going to carry as hard as the Shadow Assassin form. Ultimately, a big reason for his success is just how easily he can find great waves to move through to rain and look for ganks, skirmishes, and just generally be a pain in the bum. If you're looking to play Kayn, then make sure you're finding chances to fight champions early to start stacking up, but be a bit cautious as it is when you're at your weakest. Looking next at the Void Bug, Kha'Zix is still in a really solid spot. He's got huge burst damage, he's hard to pin down, and he has great snowball potential. This champion is peak deletion when an enemy is isolated and absolutely capable of solo carrying. Before level 6, be aware that Kha'Zix isn't the strongest early duelist and his ganks aren't stellar, but as soon as you're able to evolve your abilities and make use of your camouflage, your skirmishing becomes top tier. Controlling vision allows you to get the jump on your opponents, and it's the easiest way to capitalize on his kit. If you're facing Kha'Zix, then other than hiding in your fountain, the main goal is to avoid being isolated, get some vision control up, and when he does look to go aggressive, slam some CC down on him and squash him like a bug. Next up is mid lane, and our S tier roster is Annie, Fizz, Yone, Yasuo, and for God tier we have Zed. I've seen a bit of a decline for Katarina. The damage she gets from picking up her daggers was nerfed last patch, and although she's still solid, she has seen a slight drop in win rate. Ultimately, with how frequently you're utilizing this damage, even a small nerf can make a decent difference. Annie has risen up the ranks significantly, and our mid specialist is a big fan of this champion. The ability to easily set up ganks and deliver super powerful roams in the back of Tibbers puts her in a great spot to carry solo queue games. She's also pretty capable of dealing with assassins mid with the damage reduction and movement speed from a molten shield and her point and click CC. Now, first up, we're going to look straight at a God tier pick Zed. He is dominating games at the lower ranks, and a big factor is the sheer amount of burst damage available to the champion. He's solid at finding solo kills in lane, he's great at finding picks in the mid game, and in the late game it's difficult to keep your carries alive against him, especially when he's fed. Now, he's been holding up at a win rate just shy of 53%, which honestly is staggering considering he's a mechanically difficult champion with a high play rate. So I definitely think he's ban worthy, and if you're looking to abuse him yourself, then my biggest piece of advice is to look to use the opponent's lack of vision against them. Clear out wards, hide in bushes, and find opportunities to get the jump on the poor support who's warding alone. Rest in peace. Fizz is next on the list, and this champion has undoubtedly ruined many of your solo queue experiences. He's rocking a similar win rate to Zed, albeit he has a little bit lower play rate, but just as much frustration. And I think what makes Fizz so powerful is not just his ability to blow people up, as most assassins do have that, but utilizing his ability to go untargetable, he becomes so hard to pin down and really hard to peel. If you're playing against Fizz, watch out from launching his ultimate at you. If it connects, then you're definitely going to struggle to survive his combo. If you're playing Fizz, keep an eye out for the enemy team's CC. If you're playing against a Thresh, for example, then watch for when he throws his hook out, and that's the time you want to jump onto your trident to get maximum value and avoid the crown control. Moving down in the bot lane, in S tier we have Ashe, Misfortune and Caitlyn, and in God tier we have Jhin, and to absolutely no one's surprise, Samira. That champion has received non-stop nerfs since release and is still incredibly broken. Karthus is something that we moved down as a result of the nerfs to his base armor last patch. Although this change was intended to affect jungle, they actually really hurt him in the AD carry role as well. Typically, while clearing the jungle, Karthus can kite camps to avoid taking damage, but the reduced armor in bot lane makes him just a bit more vulnerable to harass on all-ins from enemy AD carries. Now, Jhin is still standing strong at the top tier of AD carries. He's got huge burst, great utility, and a ton of style. His ability to chain CC with his support is honestly impressive, and his damage output when he gets a couple of items is insane, especially against squishier champions. Now, Jhin is a lot of fun to play and pretty simple as long as you can count to 4. If you're playing him, then ideally pair him with a champion with some hard CC so you can combo that with your root. Look to use your 4th shot in combination with your Q to easily win trades in most matchups, but just make sure you watch out while you're reloading. If you have the misfortune of playing into Jhin, then look to pick something that can punish his immobility. You know, like Misfortune. Now, here's a bit of a weird one, and something I've personally been abusing when playing bot lane, and that's Swain. This champion is pretty underutilized, but the players who are picking him are performing exceptionally well. He's great at chaining CC with support. As soon as either Swain or his lane partner connect with hard CC, he can yank them forwards and follow up with an engage. Level 3 is a massive spike to capitalize on as you're able to chain your abilities together for a devastating combo, but the highlight for Swain bot is level 6. He wins almost every all-in at level 6 simply due to his sheer bulkiness and healing offered by his ultimate, and then in combination with that you have the consistent damage output from the drain and that final burst to finish it off. Now, Swain takes a bit of getting used to if you're more at home playing AD carries in the bot lane, but with a bit of practice he can really deliver. And a big reason I love to play him is when you're playing against assassins, dive, things like Aurelia, Zed, Yasuo, Swain is so good against these champions because he's a lot tankier than your average AD carry, and if they end up diving onto him, he can just heal off all the champions in melee range. Finally, we're looking at my home in the support lane. In S tier we have Blitzcrank, Soraka, Lux, Janet, Pantheon, Thresh, and for God tier, we have Lulu and Leona. Alistar has made a rise as he's really been performing solidly since having his Q cooldown reduced and some positive changes to his passive and base health. A big factor as well is we've seen some nerfs to other support champions that have allowed him to treat bot lane like a china shop when he's in the right matchup. Rakan is in a similar spot, having received a steady course of buffs and is starting to really stand out as a champion who's rising up the ranks. Now, something to note in terms of movement is we've seen Alistar and Rakan starting to find some headway after a steady course of buffs delivered to them, but right now we're going to focus in on Rakan. His big strength is that he doesn't have any really awful lane matchups. For a lot of champions in the support role, they're great until they're in a lane that makes you want to alt F4, but Rakan just doesn't experience that. His mix of mobility, sustain, peel and engage makes him super versatile, and he can hold his own in most scenarios. Combine that with some insane scaling due to his ability to dominate teamfights with his CC, and you have a really solid pick for solo queue. He does require some skill to wield effectively, but he's definitely a champ you can spam and is often utilised by higher elo players to carry from the support role. Next is Leona, and she is really doing a number in the bot lane. She has a simplistic kit, but she's very effective. Her all-in threat is huge due to her CC and amplifying her AD carry's damage with her passive. The end result is not many AD carries can stay alive in a lane against her. She's not as safe as Rakan or Thresh, she's not as good at peeling either, but what she excels at is shoving sunlight in your opponent's faces and giving them some sunburn. If you want to roll bot lanes and get your AD carry fed, then Leona is the champ to do so. And a tip for anyone looking to pick her up, if you cast her E Zenith Blade and then quickly press flash, it'll buffer the ability and make it very hard to avoid even if the opponent flashes. Be sure to try it in the practice tool so you can nail it in your ranked games. And that's just wrapped up for the patch 10.21 low elo tier list. As always, if you have any questions or feedback, feel free to drop them in the comment section and I'll do my best to reply to them all. Hope this information has been helpful, and be sure to subscribe if you want to keep up to date on our patch videos and other content. And I'm going to wish you better luck in your solo queue games than I've had, and I'll see you next time.